Chapter 58. Red Dancing Shoes. Chen Ge was only half a finger away from the mirror, so he got a much better view than he would have liked. The elegant school uniform was dripping with fresh blood that caused it to stick to her body. Her face was hidden behind her hair, and the overly pale skin that was exposed looked scary. The cold light from the phone screen twisted, and Chen Ge could feel his limbs becoming frozen. He used every ounce of energy in his body to stabilize his lips before he could utter the girl's name. Jang Ya? As if hearing Chen Ge's voice, the girl slowly raised her head. The curtain of black hair parted to the side, and an unblemished face appeared in his view. However, the mirror started to mist when her head was only raised halfway. She took a step forward, and she disappeared from the mirror. Where did she go? Chen Ge stared at the mirror, and something even more curious happened. Cast from the phone's light, his shadow slowly stood up to stand behind him. Chen Ge could see that the shadow was about 1.7 meters tall. As the dripping sound of something like blood entered his ears, the shadow started to gain color. The bloodied uniform stuck to its body, and it was all red. Chen Ge stood where he was and did not dare move. The chilliness from his back had climbed up his spine to his brain. Right then, the red shadow took another step back to lean against his back. Standing back to back, Chen Ge's body froze. Even as he gasped for air, the sensation that he was running out of air would not go away. The Specter has stuck to my back. Standing back to back was sometimes quite scary because you could not know who was standing behind you. Something cold seemed to reach for his fingers. Chen Ge did not dare turn to take a look. His frozen fingers slowly opened to allow the phone to slide to the floor. The light flickered twice before it switched off suddenly. Surrounded by darkness, the coldness behind his back continued to spread. Chen Ge couldn't even imagine the things that were happening to him. 2 a.m., inside an abandoned school's dance studio, facing a tall mirror, standing back to back with a Red Spectre. In a way, I guess one could call this romance. Various thoughts crossed Chen Ge's mind. Something was holding his hand, and it made him feel increasingly cold. The hair of the girl behind him was moving as it entwined itself with Chen Ge's hair. What is she planning to do? My mission here is to find the red dancing shoes. I'll fail the mission if I am unable to do that before dawn. However, Chen Ge's body was frozen in place, and the only thing he could do was stare at the mirror before him. He did not notice it initially, but several seconds later he realized with a start that fuzzy shadows were forming inside the mirror. He widened his eyes as the shadows started to become clearer. Wait, aren't these the girls who are trapped inside the chairs? Inside the mirror, 5 girls in clean uniforms entered the dance studio. Their outfits were completely different from what Chen Ge had seen earlier, so he suspected that the images he saw now were reflecting scenes that happened years ago. The 5 girls walked toward the mirror, laughing among themselves. Soon after they entered the studio, Jang Ya showed up. Even though they were wearing the same uniform, Jang Ya carried herself in a different way than the rest of the girls. She was carrying a bag in her hands. Chen Ge had seen this bag before inside the girls' dressing room. It was holding the 5 candy boxes. Jang Ya seemed to be in quite a good mood. She walked into the dressing room with hurried steps, and several minutes later, all 6 girls came out wearing their ballet dresses. The situation had not changed much. The 5 girls were in their little group, while Jang Ya tailed behind alone. Not long after they started their training, the dance studio's door was pushed open. A female teacher walked in holding the Swan Lake winning certificate in her hand. She was talking animatedly with the girls, probably encouraging and congratulating them. That day was probably not a normal school day because Chen Ge didn't see any other students. The 6 of them were likely there to do intensive training to prepare for the statewide competition. The female teacher left after half an hour. After making sure the teacher had left, the 5 girls stopped practicing and started playing on their phones and chatting while lying on the floor. The only one practicing was Jang Ya. Then, one of the girls said something while pointing at Jang Ya. The rest of the girls laughed with the exception of Jang Ya. However, she did not seem to mind it too much. After practicing for a little while longer, she stopped to rest. Then she turned to walk into the dressing room and came out with the bag of candy boxes. Jang Ya passed them to the girls, but as one of them reached for it, she was stopped by one of the other girls, who was as tall as Jang Ya. She said many things while pointing her finger assertively at Jang Ya. She then ran into the dressing room and came out with a school bag. She pulled out several love letters from it. From the name, Chen Ge knew they were all addressed to Jang Ya. This could not really be considered an argument because it was totally one-sided, dominated by the other girl who was weirdly agitated. Jang Ya's candy boxes were thus rejected. She placed them back into the bag and left. Chen Ge thought that was the end, but not long after that, the door to the dance studio was pushed open again. The few girls were startled. Thinking it was the teacher, they quickly climbed up from the floor and started to practice. A fuzzy shadow of a male walked in. He was about 1.8 meters tall, slouching, and very large in size. The man said something to the girls, and only two said something in return to him. Chen Ge was confused by his identity. The girls soon returned to their practice, and the man entered the office. Later, he opened the office door and waved for Jang Ya to come to him. Jang Ya appeared like she did not know or even trust the man. She walked toward the office with hesitation and stood at the door but did not go in. The mirror could not reflect what was inside the office. However, about 8 seconds later, the scene on the mirror darkened as Jang Ya ran out of the office. Holding his arm, the man chased after her while cursing all the way. All 5 girls in the dance studio saw this, but all of them sat where they were. None of them were willing to go to Jang Ya's aid. Soon, Jang Ya was cornered at a space that was nowhere close to the door. She screamed loudly for help, but it was not answered. The girls acted like they did not even hear her. The man said many unsavory things as he closed in on Jang Ya. Jang Ya's hands had reached the edge of the window behind her. There was only one exit left. Looking at the scene that played itself on the mirror, Chen Ge was suddenly reminded of the lines that appeared on the black phone when he won the love letter. Her eyes exposed, cheeks white as ash. The moment she fell off the building, she became the taboo of the school. Red dancing shoes and blood-dyed uniform, even her name became something that was only uttered in frantic whispers. The man studied the empty window closely but did not rush down to save Jang Ya. Instead, he took several steps back to stop beside the 5 girls, who were in complete shock. Chapter 59. Together, Forever. The dance studio was extremely quiet. In the mirror, the man was the first to recover. He stood before the 5 girls and started to glare threateningly at them. One of the girls started to weep, so the man yanked her up from the floor and pointed his finger at her face while his lips moved. The girl shook her head vehemently. Then, the girl who was as tall as Jang Ya stood up. She walked over to the man and started to help him persuade the other girls. From how she carried herself, she seemed to know the man and shared a more than friendly relationship. Perhaps it was even she who planned for the man to appear just after the female teacher left. With the girl's persuasion and the man's threat, the other girls finally nodded. After a few more minutes of discussion, the man was the first to leave. The 5 girls then entered the dressing room to change, and they all left soon after. The mirror returned to normal, but the atmosphere in the dance studio grew tense. Chen Ge could feel the chill coming from his back. It felt like he was carrying a frozen dead body. That's all? The mirror only recorded what had happened in the dance studio, but did not go into what happened next. Chen Ge believed there had to be more than that. After falling from the 4th floor, as long as it wasn't head first, Jang Ya still had a chance of being rescued. Red Spectre harbors deep resentment. Maybe the fatty snuffed out Jang Ya's last breath because he was afraid of being exposed. The water system of the activity center has been renewed, so perhaps the fatty used the system to deal with the body. As the thought cropped up in his mind, Chen Ge rejected it. Jang Ya was lost inside the school, so the police had to have been involved. Furthermore, cleaning up a body was not as simple as depicted on those crime dramas. Sometimes, the more one tried to hide, the more obvious it became. Chen Ge was curious what happened next, but the mirror had stopped moving. Perhaps I should give Inspector Lee a call. This is a murder, and Western Zhujiang's private academy is within their jurisdiction, so he must have some kind of record. Chen Ge's idea was not bad, but when he planned to pick up his phone, a scream came from behind him. Jang Ya's hair started to twine up his shoulders like snakes curling themselves around his neck and chest, tying them close together. "I'm not leaving. I just want to help you," Chen Ge argued before his breath was choked out of him. However, the black hair continued to constrict like a boa constrictor, suffocating its prey. Perhaps from Jang Ya's perspective, this was the only way the two of them could be together. This was true love. Chen Ge had escaped from the wolf's den to enter the tiger's cave. Now he understood why Jang Ya's love letter was a curse. This lady did not like living man, and the more she loved a man, the greater her desire to kill him. Standing back to back, his limbs too weak to even resist, all Chen Ge could do was to argue his case. "I will help you call the police and have law enforcement provide justice by bringing all who have harmed you to the judgment of law." The words felt ineffective even to Chen Ge's ears. Jang Ya's situation was unique. Unlike the family of 4 at Ping An Apartments, she did not need him for revenge. Those who had harmed her were trapped inside chairs already, and Chen Ge believed she had plenty to do with that. The kind and graceful Jang Ya had been completely corrupted into a mad specter. Chen Ge did not even dare to imagine the type of disaster that had befallen the 5 girls before they were trapped inside the chairs. Chen Ge had given up. This was how he was going to go. But as he prepared for death, the black hair stopped attacking. "What's wrong? There are still people who haven't received their just punishment?" he uttered quickly, to stress that he would help Jang Ya capture all those who had harmed her. The black hair started to release, as if Jang Ya was also considering the options. All Chen Ge could do then was wait. The dark dance studio returned to silence. 10 seconds later, an unexpected thing happened. While he was dancing on the line of life and death, the door to the dance studio was suddenly pushed open, and a lanky guy poked his head in to look around. When he saw Chen Ge, a cruel, excited grin lit up his face, and the hand with the peony tattoo pulled out a fruit knife from his back pocket. However, coincidentally, when Chen Ge saw the man, he also smiled, his expression saying, "You're finally here!" "Surprised to see me? You've left too many clues. The bricks on the outer walls had your footsteps, and the window on the first floor of this building had fresh dirt and grass stuck to it. After entering the building, your footprints are practically everywhere. You're too careless, and now you shall pay." The man standing at the door was naturally Zhang Peng. His eyes were bloodshot, and his mental state was unusually animated. He held the fruit knife in his usable arm. However, to Chen Ge's surprise, after Zhang Peng said that long speech, as he took the first step into the dance studio, the expression on his face shifted drastically. Earlier he had been vicious, but now he retreated worriedly, his eyes glowing with caution and resentment. The mirror monster has taken control of his body? Before Chen Ge could react, Zhang Peng started to race down the stairs. He seemed to have spotted something scary. His limbs were twisted in unnatural angles as he ran, which gave him the impression of a puppet being pulled along by his master. The black hair around Chen Ge disappeared, along with the girl behind him. All he could see was a red flash across the mirror. A chase seemed to have begun. The chilliness from his back gradually dissipated, and life returned to Chen Ge's frozen limbs. He picked up his phone and backpack before racing toward the stairs, his speed no less than Zhang Peng's. "This bloody heart mission will have to be put on the back burner for now. If I truly earn Jang Ya's affection, my life in the future will be a little too exciting for me to handle." Chen Ge dashed out of the activities center. He took a glance at the surrounding dark forest and used his phone to call Inspector Li. The phone rang once before it was picked up, and Inspector Li's voice came through. "Xiao Chen, did you run into Zhang Peng?" "Western Zhujiang's private academy. Zhang Peng is here. Other than that, I have something important to tell you," Chen Ge said through heavy breaths as he raced toward the school gate. "Fu Jun, Da Yong, contact the investigation team immediately." Inspector Li didn't hang up. After he gave his orders, he returned his attention to Chen Ge. "What is this other thing you want to talk about?" "I discovered another murder case at Western Zhujiang's private academy." Chapter 60. You found another murder case? You found yet another murder case? Inspector Li's tone on the other end of the phone was puzzled to say the least. 4 years ago, a female student by the name of Jang Ya jumped out of the building, but there is more to her death than suicide, Chen Ge said firmly. Wait a minute. Let me go look at the files first. If the victim's family had asked for an autopsy, we should have the record of it somewhere. Inspector Lee didn't hang up as he turned on the lights of the records room to search for the files. He finally found something 5 minutes later. Wait! Why does Western Zhujiang's private academy sound so familiar? Xiao Chen, get out of that school now! I'm already heading for the gate. What's wrong? That school is just weird. I can't explain it to you in just a few sentences, but I can give you a number. 6 people committed suicide within the span of 2 weeks at that school, and their deaths were all very weird. The sound of paper flipping could be heard through the phone as Inspector Lee looked through the files. That sounds about right. That number fits what I'm thinking. The school gate was within Chen Ge's view. He could exit the place soon. Fits what you're thinking. What exactly is happening over there? Don't mind that. Check whether the name of the first suicide victim is Jang Ya or not. Chen Ge was in a hurry to confirm his suspicion. Inspector Lee double-checked the records before replying. Indeed, the name is Jang Ya, but she did die from a fall. It is a suicide because the Mortician did not find any other wounds on her body. On the day of the discovery, the police did visit the crime scene for investigation. The girl fell from the 4th floor's dance studio. The window she fell from was undamaged, and the soundproof foam around it showed no signs of cleaning. So from this, we confirm Jang Ya jumped out of the building without outside influence. Without outside influence? Inspector Lee, have you considered that she was forced to do so? If she didn't jump, she would have been raped. Chen Ge relayed the scenes he had seen in the mirror. We considered that as well, and there are testimonies from Jang Ya's roommates in the records. All 5 girls said that they didn't know anything. Jang Ya jumped off the building after their class was over, so Jang Ya was inside the studio alone. According to their testimonies, Jang Ya had always suffered from high stress, was prone to solitude, and was perhaps even mentally unstable. To confirm their testimonies, the police at the time even verified their accounts with the girls from the class, and everyone agreed. Jang Ya is definitely not the person they described. They all banded together to frame her. Jang Ya was feeling indignant on Jang Ya's behalf. He did not expect that the whole class would gang up on Jang Ya. The girl didn't even do anything wrong. What kind of person Jang Ya was, you and I will never know, but the evidence doesn't lie. Inspector Lee didn't understand why Chen Ge was so agitated. In any case, get out of that school as soon as you can. We're sending our men to come fetch you. They were all lying. Take a closer look at Jang Ya's time of death. It should be before the class was over. They lied on the time of death, so those 5 girls were accomplices. The volume of Chen Ge's voice inadvertently increased. That's where you're wrong. Jang Ya's time of death was between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. Those 5 girls left school at around 5:30 p.m., their usual time of departure. Inspector Lee didn't know how happened to Chen Ge at the school, so he stood from an outsider's perspective to analyze the situation. Impossible. It is indeed possible. The Mortician conducted a detailed analysis based on livor mortis and rigor mortis. Jang Ya's time of death is indeed between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m. The cause of death was a broken spine. Other than that, there were wounds to her skull, calcaneus, and hip bone, all common injuries suffered by suicide victims that died from falling. Chen Ge had no way to retort. He stopped where he was. If Jang Ya did jump off the building before the 5 girls left, this means that she didn't die instantly after the fall. However, due to the broken bones that incapacitated her body, she could only lie in a pool of her own blood as she waited for death to come, tortured by pain and heartache until she truly died around 6 to 8 p.m. Your hypothetical scenario is possible, but you have forgotten one thing. If the girl still had a breath in her after she fell off the building, why wouldn't the 5 girls who were there save her? Even if they had their own reasons not to save her, other people at the school would have discovered her. It was a holiday, and the school was deserted other than the 6 of them who were at school to practice for the upcoming statewide competition. Their teacher had already left beforehand, and even if there were guards or someone of the sort, isn't it possible that they were sent away by people with ill intentions? Chen Ge posed a differing opinion. I'm not going to argue that with you. After all, it is a moot point arguing whether Jang Ya died from suicide or murder. You believe those 5 girls were the real murderers in Jang Ya's death and collaborated with each other to provide false testimony. But 2 weeks after that, these 5 girls died one after another. The real murderers you assumed are now dead. So how are we supposed to investigate this case? Inspector Lee was more worried about Chen Ge's safety. Inspector Lee, I never said that these 5 girls are the murderers. They are merely accomplices. The real murderer who caused Jang Ya's death is a fatty that is 1.8 meters tall with a slouched back. That's quite a detailed description. Mind telling me how you came to that conclusion? 4 years ago, the security at Western Zhejiang's private academy hadn't been completed yet, and all the witnesses are now dead. But you're telling me there's a real murderer on the run. How do you expect me to believe you? Inspector Lee had worked overtime for the past few days already thanks to the Ping'an Apartments case. It was why he was still at the station even at 2 a.m. Lethargy could be heard laced in his words. Chen Ge could discern the suspicion in Inspector Lee's voice. We can start by investigating the people who are related to Western Zhejiang's private academy from 4 years ago. We have to find this person. He was at the crime scene. Chen Ge, starting a police investigation is not a game. Do you know how difficult it is to reopen a case that was closed 4 years ago? Even if you can convince me, it'll be pointless if you cannot convince my superiors. What we need is actual proof, not suspicion, not speculation. Everything that I've said is the truth. That is according to you. Inspector Lee had started rearranging the files to put them back where they were. Do you mind telling me why you are suddenly so interested in this case? You don't give me the impression of a young man who is filled with a sense of justice. Why am I so insistent? Chen Ge was startled by this sudden question from Inspector Lee. He was reminded of the aid that Jang Ya had lent him when he was trapped inside the wooden hut, as well as the chilling loneliness coming from his back when Jang Ya was standing behind him inside the dance studio. It's nothing. In the current circumstances, the only person who can help her and come to her aid is me. Chen Ge looked at the black phone. I still don't understand what you're saying. Inspector Lee continued after a long pause. But holding up justice is the job of law enforcement. Since you've brought up the suspicion, after the case on Ping'an Apartments is wrapped up, I'll personally help you look into this. Thank you, Uncle Sanbao. Chen Ge sighed in relief. Capturing the real murderer, I suppose, is giving Jang Ya some kind of release. With regards to this godforsaken place, I really don't want to return again. He hung up the phone and turned to look at Western Zhejiang's private academy one last time. To his shock, Red Spectre Jang Ya was just standing behind him. There were about 3 meters between them. Fresh blood dripping on her school uniform, Jang Ya looked at Chen Ge with her head tilted. This time she didn't move closer, and her expression was a bit weird. Chapter 61. Affection Level Increase. Chen Ge was thankful that he didn't say anything bad about Jang Ya earlier. He laughed awkwardly and said, I came out for fresh air because the dance studio was a bit too stuffy. The red blood trailed down her uniform as Jang Ya stared at Chen Ge. Then she raised her slender, pale arm to point at the building that Chen Ge knew as the teacher's lounge. You want me to go there? Before Chen Ge could get an answer, Jang Ya disappeared. Chen Ge was several meters away from the gate, so he was caught in a conundrum. If he returned to the school to investigate, he might run into more danger, but if he just left like that, he would feel so unsatisfied. Jang Ya's attitude toward me seems to have softened. Her hint should be related to the case 4 years ago. However, this school seems to have another presence similar to Jang Ya, and there is more than one. I should probably wait for the police to arrive first, before I go back in. After jumping out of the school, Chen Ge stood on guard outside the gate. He wasn't sure whether Zhang Peng was still alive or not, so he did not dare let his guard down. 15 minutes later, the blinding headlights of a car cut through the darkness. 2 police cars were heading his way. Chen Ge jumped out into the road and waved the flashlight on his phone. I'm here! The cars stopped at the gate to Western Zhejiang's private academy, and Inspector Lee, as well as an officer Chen Ge hadn't seen before, stepped out from the car. Uncle Lee, you're so fast! According to Chen Ge's calculations, the police should have required another half an hour before to get there. We received a distress call from a taxi driver earlier saying he was getting robbed, so we were already on the way to this place. Inspector Lee had heavy circles under his eyes, signs that he had overworked himself for the past few days. Is that so? In any case, come in quick. Zhang Peng should be still inside the school. Chen Ge pointed at the abandoned school's gate. One might have thought he was the host inviting the guests into his house. Dayong, Inspector Lee said, and a muscular police officer who was about 1.9 meters tall pulled out a clipper from the car's trunk. After entering the school compound, we'll need to be very careful. The suspect is very cunning, so stick together in pairs. He turned to look at Chen Ge. Where is the last place you saw the suspect? At the dance studio, but he has run away already. In any case, I have something else to report to you. Chen Ge walked to Inspector Lee's side and pointed at the teacher's lounge. Inspector Lee, do you mind following me? Dayong, you stay behind to watch over the road. Others move out according to plan. Inspector Lee issued his orders, and then he followed Chen Ge into the teacher's lounge. This building only had 3 floors, but the interior decor was much more high class than the other buildings Chen Ge had been in. Inspector Lee held the flashlight in his hand and asked, "Why are we here? Did you see the suspect run this way?" His gaze was sharp, and the tiredness fell from the man. Once he entered the crime scene, Inspector Lee seemed to morph into another person. Zhang Peng won't have come here. Chen Ge walked ahead, trying to pinpoint the exact room Jang Ya's finger had pointed at. I'm bringing you to the place that's related to the death of the girl 4 years ago. Haven't I said I will help you investigate that after we capture Zhang Peng? The 2 cases cannot be mixed together, and the most important thing now is to capture Zhang Peng. We're here. This is the room. Chen Ge didn't answer Inspector Lee. He had waited for the police to come because he wanted to lower the risk to its bare minimum. The sign on the door said that this was the storeroom for gym equipment. After pulling off the seals and kicking the door open, Chen Ge and Inspector Lee walked into the room. Numerous balls littered the room, and exercise equipment like tennis rackets and ping-pong paddles hung from the walls. You brought me here to see this? Inspector Lee used his flashlight to scan the corners of the room. What can it prove? Gym equipment. Chen Ge walked to the center of the room and started ransacking the place. He stopped when he reached a single bed that was placed next to the innermost cupboard. There was also such a bed inside the dance studio. It looked specially made because the bed frame was slender than most normal bed frames. Why is there a need for a bed inside the storeroom? Chen Ge frowned with confusion before lifting up the bed's wooden boards. A harrowing scene revealed itself before their eyes. Underneath the worn and dusty bed frame hid 10 female ballet shoes of differing sizes, and a pair of them had been dyed black by blood. That many of them? Looking at the shoes that appeared to have been purposely hidden underneath the bed, Chen Ge did not feel anger but shock. Shock that the incident at Western Zhujiang's private academy might be more distressing than he had assumed. There's more than one victim, Chen Ge asked Inspector Lee. Why would the ballet shoes of the suicide girl be hidden here? Was there any mention of the girl's shoes in the case report? Jang Ya's affection level toward you has increased. You can write something you want her to do in Jang Ya's personal profile page. Note, it mustn't be against Jang Ya's will. Chen Ge silently retreated to the door. Tonight's experience might have been harrowing, but at least the result is good. He opened up Jang Ya's personal page, and the display turned red immediately. My demand mustn't be against Jang Ya's will. That's the only requirement. After some thought, Chen Ge wrote, I hope Jang Ya will listen to me forever. I'm sorry, but your demand is against Jang Ya's will. Please change it. I hope Jang Ya will protect me from being harmed. I'm sorry, but your demand is against Jang Ya's will. Please change it. I hope Jang Ya will not harm me or harbor any intention to kill me. That's doable, right? I'm sorry, but your demand is against Jang Ya's will. Please change it.